Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome meeting number 465, Lake Shore Park Commission. Joan, we got a quorum. Good, thank you.
27, please.
Sorry?
Here's the 27.
Okay, everybody had a copy of the minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have any additions, corrections?
Move to accept.
Got a move to accept. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All in favor?
I'm going to abstain.
You
because I
will get a
wasn't-
chance to abstain. I will make sure I ask for that. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Right here. Thank you.
Carried. Same thing with the fiscal actions report. That one you can't abstain from. We all get a chance to read it. Any corrections, additions?
Moved.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Nothing. Carried. Project review acceptance report.
Resolution 2017-40, whereas the Commission has received and reviewed the Project Review Actions Report prepared by the staff dated June 13, 2017, whereas the Project Review Committee recommends acceptance of the Project Review Actions Report, now therefore be resolved that the Commission hereby directs the Project Review Actions Report be incorporated in the minutes of the full Commission meeting. So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to accept the project review actions report. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Project review. Really light for the summer. We only have one project on the agenda this morning, and that's the Sawmill Bay Marina application.
Sawmill Bay Marina has requested a marina modification to add 2 charter vessels to their marina permit. They're represented here by Buzz Lamb, and present the project a little bit more fully and answer any of your questions.
Good morning. I'm Buzz Lamb, as you all know.
Hi, Buzz.
And I am a partner member of the Sawmill Bay Marina LLC. We've had a Class A marina permit with the Park Commission since 1996. And my permit was up for renewal this year, and I decided that I wanted to add 2 charter vessels to the marina permit. And as a result, I am standing here before you today. I want to operate a water taxi, providing service from Bolton Landing to the island campsites on the lake, to the Narrows primarily, to the Mother Bunch, and to Long Island as well. There's a demand for it these days, especially now that Uber and Lyft are so popular throughout the country. People are looking for water taxi rides as well. So if you have any questions about it, I have a joint pilot engineer license from New York State Parks and Recreation. My renewal this year is number 50. So I'm pretty familiar with Lake George.
Buzz, are these new boats or?
How many trips do you anticipate, Bud?
Well,
I mean, the more the merrier for you, I'm sure. But
yeah, I don't anticipate a lot. Right now, I have on my schedule maybe a dozen trips. I don't advertise. I have a poster that I put over at Norwalk Marina. Most of my clients are referrals, word of mouth. I tell people I do this because it's any excuse to get out on the lake. So I'm also providing a service because I feel that there are 2 other operations in Bolton Landing that offer water taxi service, shuttle services to the islands. And I feel that their rates that they charge are exorbitant. And I have set my rates at a much more reasonable level, and as a result, word of mouth is what gets me the business. So, Bruce, in answer to your questions, I probably wouldn't do more than 4 or 5 trips a week. But who knows?
yeah. Any commissioners have any questions?
Buzz, are these new boats or boats you already have?
These are boats I already have. As a matter of fact, the one boat I used at Norwalk Marina is a 19-foot fiberglass boat, and I was on the list that was at the workshop as having 2 PV boats, and this was one of them. And when I renewed it, I called Parks and Rec, spoke to PG&A, and I asked him if he would be coming to Lake George because I wanted to renew the public vessel designation on that 19-foot fiberglass boat. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be in Lake George tomorrow. So from one day making the decision to do it to the next day having it, he asked me, do you have all the equipment? I said, yeah, absolutely. So the next day he came up, certified the boat, even gave me the PV to stick on the front of it. So, and they've been inspecting it every year ever since.
Cool.
Any of the commissioners you wanted to ride on the dinky boat, you want to ride on this taxi service? Let's see if it's going to work. You need an associate?
Sometimes.
Crew.
You have to have a PV license, Jim.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I should ask staff, Joe, is there any problems with congestion from where it's operating with?
Sawmill Bay is known to be over capacity. As you know, it's a 5-mile-an-hour zone. So much slower speeds, perception. Looking at the rec study, only 2% of folks report congestion. So there's not the perception of congestion, despite the fact that it is over capacity. Part of the reason it's over capacity is probably because the boats are moving so slowly. So when you take a picture, they're all still sitting there instead of being long gone. But these are boats that have been there and a licensed captain. So that's looked at.
They're come out with a cell phone app?
Well, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to be too busy with it.
Okay.
He's retired, remember?
Yeah, you're retired.
And the newspaper keeps me busy enough.
Yeah, that's true. Any further questions for Buzz? Thanks, Buzz. Anybody else in the audience want to speak on this application? Sir?
Ron Ball, Queensberry. What's the difference between a private vessel and a piloted vessel?
You have to tell us.
I don't know. I have to ask you.
You mean a public vessel? Are
Pardon?
you referring to a private vessel versus a public vessel?
Well, I see boats out there that are marked PV, and I'm just wondering if it's a private vessel or is it a piloted vessel? Because I understand you have to have a different license for each.
Lieutenant, can you?
Yeah, if it's a public vessel, it's being used for a fee. People pay a fee to use it, or it's working for a fee. It does have to be someone with a pilot's license.
Okay. The question I have about this charter service is they're going to take people out to the islands, stay on the islands and whatnot. And this has already been happening for a few years that I know of. And one time I was going up the lake on my boat and I saw this canoe. It was loaded right down. There was 2 people in the canoes. They're loaded right down with gear. And it was quite rough out there. So I pulled up next to them and I asked them where they were going with it and if they needed a hand. And they were really happy that I asked to begin with, but they were really overloaded with this canoe. And they were coming from Norwal, they're going to Chicks and Hens Island. And I knew where it was, and I decided I'm going to pull them with my boat, which I did. I got over there, and they were very thankful. But they said they needed to go back one more time. They asked me if I could take them back and pick up the rest of their stuff, because they were camping on this island. I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I want to enjoy my boat for the day and go out on it. But I've seen boats overloaded, and even like these pontoon boats at times. They're very stable in the water, pontoon boat is. But they'll put all this gear on there, and there's no restrictions to it. You can, as much as you want to put on there, fine. As long as each passenger's got a vest, a life vest, you're more than happy to go and watch an 8-minute film, and away they go. But when you get into charters, I'm just wondering, I would think about the Ethan Allen and how that collapsed. And some people said it was overloaded. Some people said because they put this rack up to the top to shade them. And there was all kinds of things that went on about the Ethan Allen, and it was a terrible accident. And so I'm just wondering if these charter boats, if they're going to start hauling campers out there, And there's some other regulations that should be looked at to make sure that we don't run into like an accident with the Ethan Allen, okay, for one, or like that person I saw in a canoe going out there. And I just think that somewhere along the line, they should be held to something more than the regular boater on the lake. Should they need, like you just authorized at a tiki bar, they needed a pilot, someone, captain and assistant on there, and I don't know how they're ever going to make any money with that thing, but certainly doesn't look stable out there. And so that was my point to make. You know, I mean, I just think you should probably look into this really good before you make this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Plus, your boat has limitations on it by not only the manufacturer, but by your license as far as weight, passengers, and so forth, correct?
That is correct. And the state of New York also, the tag on the boat says 8 passengers on the 19-foot fiberglass boat, and the state of New York has said 5 passengers plus a captain.
Right.
They've reduced that load, and also there's a weight capacity which is
Correct.
printed on that data plate as well, and we have to stay within that level. And I've done it with people as well, that they have an enormous amount of gear because they're going out for a week or 2. And I tell them, we're going to have to make 2 trips, because at this point, you can't take any more of your gear.
Yeah, to answer your question, there's already, to get his PV license, his boat is already limited. And your boat is, any boat that you have a motorized boat on Lake George, just like Buzz says, there's a placard on it, says the number of passengers you can have on board and the total weight.
How do they regulate the weight?
You want us to weigh every boat?
Say the guy puts 4 or 5 bags of firewood on there.
Well, he's assuming a liability. If he hurts somebody and he's exceeded the weight limit or passenger limit on his boat, his business and himself are history.
What accidents happen with combination of things?
Any further comments on this?
I'd like to comment on Mr. Ball bringing up the canoers that have, overly loaded canoes. Lieutenant Johns, do you see that often? Because it seems like when I'm out on the lake, I encounter that same situation more than I'd like to. And we were up at Hewlett's Landing a couple of weeks ago, and we were in Kitchell Bay going up to the, to our family home, and there was a canoe, 2 people in a canoe, overloaded, and my husband goes, "Oh my God, they don't know what they're doing." And I said, "Just go real slow," and we went and we asked them if they needed any help, and they said, no, they were fine. They were, I guess, going over to Burgess Island, so they were okay. But boy, I do see it more now than ever, and it is scary. So what do you do?
Same thing. If we see something, we'll offer to help. We'll often stay in the area, make sure they make it to the destination, or if they can be okay.
Do you ever have any mishaps? I mean, I don't even know how you would find out.
There are mishaps with boats that are improperly loaded. It could be just a bow rider where everybody sits in front of the boat.
Well, yeah, that's true,
and the weight
too.
comes over.
Yeah.
It's just improper loading.
Yeah.
There are mishaps every year.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Ball, for bringing that up.
Unfortunately, you can't regulate common sense.
Right.
No.
Joe, you're on. We have no more comments on this boat applicant.
Resolution 2017-41, application number 5220-24-17M1. Applicant is Sawmill Bay Marina. Whereas the applicant has applied for a permit to modify an existing Class A marina to add 2 charter vessels. And whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the Commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NY-CRR Section 7.5. And as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment, and whereas the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3, and public notice has been published and distributed as required, the applicant has demonstrated that the facility complies with the Class A marina requirements of 6 NYCRR 646-1.2. And whereas the Commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above application as proposed. So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the application. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Lake Stewardship Group in Cleverdale and Ron Miller. Those people have worked very hard, and I think most of our aims are in accordance with each other. And you've come to give us a presentation of a summary.
Good morning. Welcome to the East Side. My name is Ron Miller, and on behalf of the Lake Stewardship Group of Cleverdale, I want to thank you for the opportunity to address the Commission this morning. Our group was formed in 2012, and since then we've been advocating and supporting initiatives of the Commission and others. And we have some steering committee members present here today. Pete Collins, Rosemary Pusateri, Bill Mason, and Tricia Freer. Not here, but on our steering committee are Pat Burke and Steve Seaboard. We formed our group in 2012 with a simple mission to do all we can to protect Lake George. And we have a letter, you have a letter from our group, and we'd like to review that today. We view these issues in the letter as threats to the general water quality and protection of Lake George. I'm going to try not to read verbatim the letter, but address each of the points. There are 4 topics: pollution, invasive species, shoreline damage and safety, and enforcement and education. I'm hoping that doing this will elicit some discussion and questions. On the topic of pollution and sanitary sewage, the Park Commission is in the unique position to take a leadership role in the regulation of septic systems and wastewater disposal on a basin-wide basis. This would include standards for septic replacement and provisions for certification of septic systems in local property transfer laws, hoping to eliminate existing low-quality or failed on-site septic systems. On the subject of fertilizer, we continue to recommend the Park Commission take action to require standard lakefront regulation on the use of fertilizers and pesticides, such as the town of Queensbury has on its books. On the subject of road salt, the Park Commission should continue to collaborate with local governments and insist on the minimization of road salt usage. On the subject of stormwater, we support the update of stormwater management regulations. We believe the mitigation of existing sources of lake contamination from stormwater is a very high priority. The Park Commission should insist that local governments restrict stormwater management designs for new construction and any modifications requiring permits. So that was pollution. Next topic is invasive species. We strongly recommend the Park Commission continue utilizing available funds to eradicate Asian clams along with other invasives. In addition, the Park Commission should consider developing a program that would harness the desire of local citizens to participate in eradicating infestations, such as the Sandy Bay Asian clam infestation, which is not included on the Asian Clam Task Force fund. Rosemary Pusateri is probably going to will add a couple comments when I'm done on Asian clams. On the subject of areas that you all have identified as infestations of areas with Asian clams and milfoil, We recommend the Park Commission mandate no anchoring in those areas in order to minimize the spread of those species. It's a repeat emphasis from one of our previous presentations, but we're looking for no anchoring in known areas of infestation. Next topic is shoreline damage and safety. We suggest the Park Commission consider establishing a limit on the size of non-commercial, privately owned watercraft allowed to be launched and housed on Lake George. These really large vessels put a strain on lake infrastructure, such as public docks, mooring buoys, shoreline, seawalls, beaches. And Pete Collins is going to add a couple remarks when I'm done on large vessels. On the subject of speed limits, currently there's a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit lake-wide within 100 feet of shorelines, docks, moorings, and anchored boats. We strongly recommend that distance of 100 feet be extended to 200 feet. This would make a huge difference in the safety of swimmers, people enjoying the lake, as well as shoreline protection from damage, property damage. There's a precedent on other water bodies in the state of New York that have 200 feet as a 5-mile-an-hour distance from shorelines, docks, moorings, and anchored boats. In fact, St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario went to 600 feet just recently, 5-mile-an-hour zone, 600 feet from shoreline to help protect the properties along the shoreline of the river and the lake due to flooding. So there's precedent. Last topic was enforcement and education, and I'm going to read this one. And it's hard to get these letters through about 7 or 8 people, so I don't want to shortchange somebody's authorship here. But enforcement and education is huge, obviously, and we applaud the Commission's recent and ongoing commitment to boater education and expect that we will all see improvements in safe, respectful boat operation. An important component of the expected improvements, however, is the strict enforcement of regulation. We respectfully suggest that enforcement officers who are too nice actually might not be encouraging compliance with regulations regarding speed, certification, distance from crafts, anchored boats, porta potties, so on and so forth. And, any imprudent, erratic, or unsafe operation of watercraft needs to be addressed. And we hope that for a little more stricter enforcement to encourage compliance. We certainly appreciate all the work the Commission does. I'm going to let Rosemary speak a few minutes about Asian clams, but I'm available for questions on any or all of our priorities.
Yeah, Ron, can I ask you a question? I'm not a liminologist, and I didn't progress into an engineering career. But do you have any, or know that there's a source, and I'm going to ask Dave because he's more interested. Is there a source anywhere on the attenuation of wake waves as far as distance goes? Because if you just, I have a thing about just increasing distances arbitrarily, whether it's, we do the same thing in stormwater. You have to have a good scientific reason for asking 200, 400, 600 feet. And there's got to be somebody out there has an engineering background. There's got to be studies done on how much damage you get from a wave at 100 feet from shore, and how much it can attenuate and be over 600 feet.
Absolutely, there's hydrology and the science of that. I'm just intuitively, you expect there's dissipation over the travel of 100 feet, but I think that one of the larger components of our request is the safety of swimmers and people enjoying the lake. Sandy Bay, for example, boats will line up outside the buoys and they'll be anchored. Well, there's a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit within 100 feet of anchored boats. And what do people do? They come roaring through that array of anchored boats, oblivious to the 100 feet rule, and then get into Sandy Bay, and so on and so forth. So I think to me, 200 feet is easier to understand that I'm within 200 feet. 100 feet is very hard to perceive, and it's also a limited safety barrier. A typical ski rope is 75 feet. So 100 feet is close. So I think for some of us, it's the proximity and safety as much or more than shoreline protection.
Yeah, I would, I don't know, I'm not arguing with the safety issue because I think that's a major issue, but I am making a point, hopefully, that just to arbitrarily say, especially because people are concerned about wave shore erosion, down the docks, and boat damage and so forth, and you really have to base those distances on, are you going to get the same damage or wake from 100 feet as you would get from 600 feet? Before anyone should consider a regulation that would limit it that far, you should at least have definite, in other words, if you get 5% reduction in the wave for going out to 600 feet versus what you have at 100, it doesn't make sense to me. But from a safety standpoint, I agree with you totally on that. I just don't like it bunching all these arguments together because in fact it probably weakens your case if there's no justification for to mention shoreline erosion.
Sure, Bruce, I think there's other stuff in here too. I know where we are in Hart Bay, with maybe one or two exceptions, everybody on that bay has the water line going into the lake. And 100 feet of protection from boats. What we're dealing with now is IOs, off plane, drawing 4 to 5 feet of water to the skeg of the IO. I mean, that didn't exist when we did 100 feet, but now it does. And I think in our area, we've had to replace a couple water lines because somebody ran into them. And that's just for running off plane or half plane like this,
well, that makes a big difference, obviously.
I think 200 feet would really work better for Hart Bay at least.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I'm kind of with you, it's hard to, 100 feet, it's a tow line. I mean, that's not very far, frankly.
Actually, a boat running at 25 miles an hour can leave a lot less weight than one running at 6, 7, 8 miles an hour. And you're sitting there.
Yeah, but under 5, you're off plane and you're flat.
I understand.
Well, let me go back on a napkin. I'm going to figure out what the percentage of reduction in 100 feet is. But no, in seriousness, it's absolutely worth being able to quantify it.
That's all. That's the only point I'm making is if we're going to do something, or you're suggesting something to quantify it, so there's at least an argument.
And Bruce, the other thing that this goes back to the safety issue because I've listened to the same concerns many times. We have people who have a buoy or a float or something that's out, and one of the reasons that they put it out in front of their place is to try and keep the boats away. And they find boats going between that buoy and shore at a high rate of speed, just kind of buzzing the shoreline. And they're getting very discouraged by all of that. So this is partly a response to that. Again, the safety thing. I know.
You know what? I wasn't arguing against any of this.
Just want to bring it up for discussion because if we are considering, the 200 feet, these are all the things that people are saying to me that I'm hearing about as well. So.
So that I don't have to get back up and say thank you.
Thanks,
very
Ron.
much.
Thank you.
We are certainly partners. We believe in all of this, and we're a pretty good little group.
Yes, thank you.
Rosemary Pusateri. It was on my porch on June 22nd. Dr. Jeremy Farrell came to meet with 15 of us for a wide-ranging discussion about Asian clams, and in particular about Asian clams in Sandy Bay. We and others around the lake are not content with nothing being done, and we want to know what we can do ourselves. And I thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I think Pete wants to say a few words.
Sure.
Pete Brooks.
I'm Pete Collins of the Lake George Stewardship Group of Cloverdale. We're asking the Lake George Park Commissioners to consider limiting the maximum size of boats on Lake George to a size that is consistent with the size of the lake. Boat size is one of the major factors affecting shoreline erosion and water clarity. Many lakes in the U.S. have size restrictions. Candlewood Lake in Connecticut and Big Bear in California restrict both sides. both sides. Both lakes are smaller than Lake George and restrict boats to 26 foot. Lakes with horsepower limitations for boats are quite common. This also reduces boat size. When implementing these restrictions, other lakes have grandfathered existing oversized boats registered on the lake. Nearby Lake Champlain has historically had a large transient and large big boat population. It's a virtual highway for large commercial vessels and pleasure yachts due to its connections to the Hudson and St. Lawrence River. This does not apply to Lake George. A common sense restriction of boat length of 45 to 50 foot would present no hardship to the buildings of Lake George. I'd also like to say, we've seen other lakes, what you brought up on the length from shore frequently comes up when people in other lakes are discussing it. Like people ask, well, why don't we go to 109 feet? So 201 feet, where you come up with 200 feet? So that will come up.
Thank you. Anything else?
Can I, just one other question, that came up in our meetings, and I said I would get an answer to this, and I don't really know the answer. I was asked regarding enforcement, what is the deal on the warnings? And maybe this is for Sergeant Joe Johns to just kind of give me an idea, how many warnings are issued before a ticket is issued? Do we track the warnings? Do we track them under boat registration numbers, or do we track them under drivers? What do we do? Because, and what they're calling for is stop issuing so many warnings and start issuing more tickets. But I didn't know the answer to that. What is there a policy? Is there?
Well, starting last year, we did start tracking registration numbers on vessel stops on our computer. It's officer discretion based on the situation at the time.
Do they when they have something, they plug in, they have an on-site computer on the boat?
On-site computer. I do print out, once a week or so. We talked about possibly getting little tablets in boats, so they can pull some things like that up.
Okay.
We haven't got to that point yet.
Okay.
We're just at the point of where we're starting to get
might be in the future
data and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Somebody raising your hand? I'm sorry? Does somebody else want to say something?
On the enforcement, I had a question. I've taken pictures of violators. Given the bill. We're taking action, but today, you're taking cell phone. You take cell phone video. Do you transmit it to somebody so that you need to know about the violation?
We don't have any artificial cell phones. The officers all have private cell phones. So they have to be, that's their personal account. You can take a video if you want, if you call patrol. As a matter of fact, this past Saturday, we had somebody who had a complaint, a boat was buzzing the shoreline up in the Narrows. They took a video of it. We interviewed the subject, went out, pulled over the boat, and it resulted in a 40-mile confiscated arrest. So, we do go out, we do, take complaints and pull people over. An officer cannot issue a ticket based on your complaint that you're buzzing the shoreline, you can't write a ticket for buzzing the shoreline. You would have to take a statement from you, you would have to take that to court, and you would actually be the first prosecuted ticket. So it's a violation. We can't issue a ticket for a violation. I'd have to look into that. With video, you can't really measure the exact distance to a video.
But in my case, I consider it a flat
Yeah, I mean, if you have that, you know, if you make a point to us, well, vessel, we will stop it, you know, at least have a tough discussion with them.
Okay, I'll give you a shot.
Anybody else? Ron?
The 5 mile an hour speed limit. I'm fine with it, don't get me wrong, okay? And here's what happens. You take the Marine Patrol, I think he's got a Boston Whaler, is that right? Boston Whaler, up on plains, makes very little waves. And when he's going 5 miles an hour, he's got a lot bigger weight because he's plowing through the water. As you plow through the water, you make a bigger weight, which is going to buck up the shore more, okay? I'd like to see it 200 feet, you know, but I don't know about going to 5 miles an hour if that's going to solve the issue, you know, but I can't see people flying close to the shore at 40 miles an hour either. And I think the way it is, it probably should stand the way it is. I can't see either way. I think you got an issue either way that you go with that. The other thing is about anchoring. Just recently, not recently, but a while ago, I heard from voters that in Basin Bay, they got markers there now that you can't drop anchor within 200 feet, which I know it's been on and off, and there were some questions about the guy that owns the property there. He said, I guess his property was up for taxes, and he was going to let it go, and then finally he paid for it and paid his taxes, and so one of the things that he wanted done was I wanted to make that private property. So here's the issue I got, because I'm a voter, and I've talked to a lot of voters about this, and I think they're going to be really upset once the weather starts getting nice and they start out there voting. You can't drop anchor within 200 feet, but now you can't swim there from there to shore. Now this strip of land that's in Basin Bay is right along the road. I know there's no water lines there, but this has been a place that voters would go for years and years and years and drop anchor so you can stand in water up to here and swim and wreck and fish and whatever. What I'm afraid of is if this is allowed, this guy's allowed to put the sign that says from 200 feet from shore out, no swimming, no fishing, that anybody owns on the lake can do it to their property, the private property. So that means there's going to be a lot of places that people can't swim and a lot more places that people can't drop anchor. And the boaters are being forced out. And there's really nobody that represents the boaters. No. I never see anybody here at the meeting that represents the boaters. And you know, you put some extra fees on our boat, which I pay, I'm fine with it, but we're not getting anything out of it. There's less sites up on the islands to go camping, to you know, bring our boat up there, and because now charter companies want to bring the people up and charter them out to the islands and help them set up camps there, so less campsites. It's like the local people from Glens Falls, Queensbury, Lake George, that are boaters on the lake are getting squeezed out. We don't have any representation. And so I think somebody better check into this, because I honestly believe there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be terribly upset about the fact that they can't swim in there at Basin Bay anymore. There's no houses there. It's about a 600-foot stretch, or maybe more, greater. I just think somebody's got to start representing us boaters. We're just getting squeezed out. A friend of mine, I'm going to tell you this last story, and I'm done. A friend of mine, he's been boating on the lake, he said for 50 years, he's been boating on the lake. But for the last 20 years, he was at a private house. And that family allowed him to go in there and keep his boat on this private dock. And then the husband passed away, and so this gentleman, I'm not going to mention his name, I'm not going to mention where the house is, this gentleman decided to help the woman do her landscaping and mowing and clean up the place, and then she would allow him to park his boat on there. Last year, the woman said she was getting worried that she was going to be sued or shut down or something else because more than one boat on a dock is a Class A marina. So this guy tells me, he says, I've been there 20 years, and now all of a sudden I haven't got a spot to put my boat. There has only been one dock in the paper, the local paper, for a person to go to find a dock. They're not there anymore. There's no rentals. They're absolutely obsolete. And the thing is, right now, if you start at Boardwalk, from Boardwalk, the southern end of the basin, and you go all the way up to Green Harbor, we counted almost 50 slips where there should be boats and there was no boats. I don't know if it's because that effect of the Class A marina is put in. I don't know what's causing it, but I know that they're going to commercial. I think Marine Village is going to go commercial. There's a couple other spots right along in there. These used to be boaters that were in there and used them. Local boats, us local people. They like to come up and we got a place to put our boat, instead of pulling it out, pulling it in. Okay? And by you enforcing this Class A marina, you force this guy off the lake. Okay? He doesn't want to be, he doesn't have anything more to do with the lake. He's not happy about it, but he couldn't find a place to put his boat and he tried. Okay? He doesn't have an awful lot of money. But the question I'm going to ask you is, what harm does his boat do to the lake? It's just sitting there. For 20 years it's sitting there. What harm? I know back in the 80s they used to dump overboard the grain and wastewater and everything, and then you guys put a stop to it, which is great. Got no problem. But I want to know what harm that boat is causing. Why can't he be grandfathered in? He's been there. He's taken care of the lake. He's done everything absolutely right. He doesn't make any issues, but now he's got no place for his boat. If I know of one person, there's probably a lot more. And this guy told me he heard there could be as many as 400 slips gone from the lake because if you start enforcing this Class A marina. And I believe him. I think that's the truth. We have no representation with the boat. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bruce, can I jump in just a little bit on that one? I think if we have the reporters here, I think it would be good if we get some, maybe more factual information out on what you're talking about.
Go ahead.
So I think, Ron, what you might be talking about are Class B marinas, is that what you're referring to, not Class A's?
The woman said that there might have been more than one boat there. Might have been more than two boats. Okay. But only that woman owned one boat. Okay. The owner of the house. So there might have been two boats here. I don't know, or three. I didn't know. But, I know I've seen them 2 or 3 years.
So, Ron, any marina for hire, any dock for hire on Lake George goes to a commercial fee. Class B registrations, and they're simply a registration. It's not an application. You file the paperwork. Roger comes out from our office and he measures the dock and he says, all right, you have a 40-foot dock. This goes to the commercial rate, so instead of paying $50, you pay $200. That's the extent of it. And you just have to ensure that you have wastewater there and somebody has a place to go to the bathroom. That's the entirety of the Class B registration. So when we sent out a letter last year saying, hey, this regulation has been in place since 1987, and we know it's well undersubscribed, but just so you know, we're going to start taking a look at this because we have people coming to us and saying, listen, this guy's been doing this for years, paying residential rates, he's renting out his dock slips, how is that fair? So we started taking a look at it, and we did have people come in and say, yeah, we are renting out a slip over here, and this dock is now a commercial dock, it's a Class B marina. From what I've heard, and I get most of the calls in the office on this, we don't see it as driving people off the lake. They may not be happy about paying the extra $150 for the fee, but in most cases, they're charging anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000 for that slip, so it's a part of doing business. The bigger problems that we have are the ones that, if it's an extended family that doesn't live there, that's also a Class B marina, and we continue to struggle with that. But taking a look at this and how it has decreased the amount of people that are eligible to dock on Lake George, the commission doesn't see it that way. It is a 30-year-old regulation that's simply been undersubscribed, and now we're trying to outreach and educate people as to what this regulation is about, and we've had a pretty positive response from it. So you had several points, and I can't remember all of them, but I'd be more than happy to talk to you at the end, because as you're talking to your voting constituency, a lot of what you're saying is either not exactly accurate, or I think we have an answer and a path forward that would make you happier than I think you are right now. So please catch me after the meeting.
What's a Class A? What's ruled as a Class A?
A Class A is any more than one outside boat on that property.
Okay, you
And
kept
so,
talking about B, so more than one outside boat on it.
and that has been in place since 1987.
Right.
All Class A marinas come in front of this board to determine, does it make sense for the neighborhood? Do they have bathroom facilities? And do they have garbage facilities? Do they have parking? So that's the purview of this board, and from my 5 years on this board, there's been very few Class A marinas on a residential basis that have been turned down, because most of them seem fairly reasonable, and a lot of them have actually been in operation for a very long time. So if you're aware of situations where this is happening in mass, I swear, I listen to this stuff all over the lake, and Walt is very good about bringing the other perspective into it.
Rebuild. There's 12 slips gone because they don't have bathrooms for the boat.
Have them contact the commission. If we don't know about it, then we can't fix it. So have them contact us and let us know what's going on out
They're
there.
going to get time to pursue. But the thing is, it's the local people. The local people that were there, those 12 slips that us people had are gone. Okay? But it isn't just there in Marine Village. You go all the way through. All the way to Green Harbor. There's so many docks that just tend to send because they're not marine qualified. Class A marine.
And I've been here 5 years, and I can't recall a time, and Joe can correct me, I haven't recalled a time where we've turned down a Class A marina that they haven't met the basic requirements, which is parking, bathroom facilities, and garbage. There may have been one or two, but it's pretty straightforward. It's not a complicated thing. And if there's people that are simply shying away from going for a Class A marina, then they should come talk to us about that. The bigger issue on the lack of berthing on Lake George has tended to be the transition from seasonal berthing to rental boats. So we saw that, Dean, I think we had 3 or 4 in one meeting last year where commercial marinas wanted to swap out their seasonal berthing for rental boat operations because they can make more money on it, and that's their business model, that's fine. But that has decreased the number of seasonal rental slips available on Lake George. So a lot of this stuff is tied in, and I didn't catch all of your points, but I'd love to sit down and talk to you about it.
Okay, another point though, Basin Bay. Can you elaborate on Basin Bay?
I would love to, but know who's more qualified than that? Mark Miliari.
Okay,
Thank you. Well, the 200-foot no anchoring zone is not exclusive to Basin Bay. It's lake-wide. It's a restricted use zone. It's in Part 646-9, I believe.
That's 200 feet, I'm sorry, that's 200 feet within, in front of the property. In front of the property that's owned by
That's correct.
somebody other than the state or something other than the municipality. That 200 feet is in that.
That's correct. Yeah. And there are, I was going to say, there are exceptions to that. In that particular area, there are supposed to be placed buoys as a request from the Lake George Park Commission and the Sheriff's Office that delineate the area in there as no angling. So that's all I know about it.
No swimming.
From a boat. From a boat. There is navigation through there. You can navigate. You can navigate your boat through there.
But this clearly says keep out.
It's not supposed to say keep out. That was the permit that was issued, floating objects under navigation law, was not complied with. The permit is going to be revoked and replaced, and the buoys are going to be changed.
Excuse me, say again?
The permit that was issued under navigation law was not complied with. The buoys were not supposed to be marked to keep out. The permit that was issued as temporary revocable permit is going to be rescinded or revoked, and a new permit issued, and the buoys must say no anchor.
So if I drive bait 300 feet out, I can swim in there short.
Yeah, well, it's recreating from a boat, an anchored boat in that area,
A
right?
lot of people think you can't.
Right. You are.
Appreciate that.
We're trying to fix that.
Yeah, it's being fixed as we speak.
Okay. Respond. Thank you, Ron, for bringing all this up. Responsible Boating Initiative, you already talked to us, or is he going to talk to us?
Yeah, I guess I have.
You can do it.
The Responsible Boating Initiative. Okay. This is a new outreach and educational initiative regarding boating under the influence. It was organized by then Warren County DA Kate Hogan and Warren County Supervisor Claudia Bramer. Our acting DA will take over for Kate Hogan. The purpose of this is to set up a countywide awareness and education program designed to end boating while intoxicated. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago. This brought together the key stakeholders, which are the marinas, the restaurants and bars, lake associations, other businesses and nonprofits, and representatives from the county and the Park Commission. We came together. Some things we discussed are some outreach materials. Jesse Jackson from Look TV, he was asked to put together something that would really capture what we're trying to say. He came up with a poster, and it's a picture of Charlotte jumping off Bob Canar's boathouse, right in midair. Really nice picture with caption, "Keep kids' dreams alive." On the bottom it says, "Remember Charlotte and never operate a vessel while under the influence." So hoping to get that out, get some posters out, just the marinas, the restaurants, stores, at the boat launch sites. They're talking about at the rest areas on the thruway as well as the Northway. Just trying to expand it out as far as we can. They're possibly talking about looking at some of the unused billboards on the Northway, if that's possible as well. Talked about possibly some public service announcements. There was some talk about TIPS training, which is alcohol awareness training for those that work at the restaurants and bars. Try to be more aware when someone is intoxicated. Maybe talk to them about, hope you're not driving out of here or something. Talked about trying to end the, when people ask for one to go for the boat, where restaurants and bars will stop doing that. We talked about enforcement. We've got Operation Dry Water coming up next weekend. Operation Dry Water is a national boating while intoxicated awareness program, and all across the country from June 30th to July 2nd. There'll be heightened awareness on boating while intoxicated. We'll see checkpoints set up, increased patrols, and this isn't just Lake George, it's nationwide. They have a website and look at all the agencies that are signed up to it across the country. So we will be involved in that. We also talked about an increase in night patrols this summer. We're working jointly with the Warren County Sheriff's Department. They're going to give us one of their sheriff's deputies to ride with one of our officers to provide another night boat. That began last week and resulted in a DWI arrest. We also discussed problems that with the drugs. It's not only alcohol, but drugs on the lake and on the roads. Bob Canar, Charlotte's grandfather, is working with the Sheriff's Department. He's looking to purchase a portable unit that can test for drugs as well. So that will be made available to the boat patrols as well. that's about it. We're going to move forward, and hopefully we're trying to get this out, some of this stuff out by the end of the week. I think we're trying to get it out before 4th of July, so we should be seeing some information just as an awareness. We also asked those, at the marinas and other places that see boats that come in and out a lot. They're really on the front lines. If you see something, give us a call. We really want to, if we think somebody's intoxicated out there operating, the sheriff's department call, they'll dispatch us, and people have been doing that the last 3 weeks, and we've had 3 weeks with alcohol-related arrests. So we're just kind of looking to work together, the patrol, the sheriff's department, along with everybody else, and hopefully make the lake safer and reduce the amount of motor intoxication. Any questions?
So I'm not familiar, actually I should be because I'm a voter, but could you just review, is it New York State .08? Is that same as driving?
It is same as driving a car.
And then how about open container? Because
there is no law for open container on the lake. So you can have open containers in your boat.
you just have to be not intoxicated.
Not intoxicated. .04 is motor liability impaired.
Okay.
So it's just like it's like a DWA item, it's a DWA item, motor liability impaired. If you're between .04 and .08, and then over .08 is motor liability intoxicated. Okay. Trying to cover everything here. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Joe.
Got a question? Yeah, you can answer it. You can ask.
I'm become a little bit shy of calling the dispatcher to call in. But do you recommend that people who observe erratic or strange behavior or that we should call that in?
Yeah, if you see something very strange, we do recommend calling it. If it's during the week, during business hours, you can call our office. They have a radio that they can call us on both as well.
Oh, we can call the
You call the park commission, but that's Monday through Friday during business hours. Okay?
Otherwise, we call the dispatcher.
Otherwise the dispatcher won't count if you really have an issue with it.
But last year, I saw somebody towing a paddleboard in Harris Bay, more than once. And they were going, yahoo, yahoo, and I thought, might be under the influence.
Thank you, John. Joe. Charter boat vessel update. Gee, a new subject. No, good. Good. Dave?
Yeah, I could ask Eileen to start us off, and I'll jump in towards it.
So we had a meeting, a workshop on June 16th to discuss this issue, and just to refresh everybody's recollection, the issue of charter boats came about really in the last few years because we've seen an increase in the number of charters on the lake. Currently, the Commission regulates charters if they are operated out of a marina. We have a 1995 memo that really discussed fishing charters, and at that point, the Commission determined that fishing charters, although the regulation for tour boats, which are currently regulated by the Commission, defines tour boats as any boat that's operated that carries a passenger for a fee. So that regulation would seem to encompass charter boats because that's what charter boats are. But we have this 1995 memo that really was for fishing vessels, and there was a determination made that fishing charters really aren't making much of an impact on the lake, and that those should not be regulated as tour boats. And so there was this sort of distinction made between tour boats and charter boats, and charter boats that weren't operated out of a marina were essentially unregulated. And again, in the past few years, we've had an increase in charter vessels, and they haven't been fishing vessels, and we're beginning to see an impact. So we had a discussion meeting on June 16th to talk about rescinding that interpretation, that 1995 interpretation, to include, to to get rid of it and have charter boats now being regulated as tour boats, recognizing, of course, that there are charters that have been out there for years, and that they would need a way to continue operating. The problem with tour boats is that tour boats have to be operated out of marina. That's under the regulations. They have to be operated out of a Class A marina, and many of these charters are not. So what we've been looking at, both the commission and the staff have been looking at ways to allow these folks to continue to operate, either by partnering with a Class A marina or by some sort of variance application to allow them to apply for a variance if they are operating at large, if they're just operating on their own dock, for example. And so we expect to have a proposal to the Commission for your consideration in July, which would rescind the 1995 memo and would allow staff to grandfather certain vessels that have already been in existence and have a policy going forward as to how we are going to regulate charter vessels, new charter vessels that come in. The goal is just to not to impede anybody's business plan, but just to get a sense of where these folks are operating, whether their operation makes sense in that location, and to really enforce the regulations as written.
Anything further, Dave?
I should cover it.
Any questions from the commissioners?
We did have a meeting with those folks, and we got some good feedback. Going to incorporate that feedback, and I think we have a good map for the future. So, Eileen, you haven't seen my memo to Bruce yet. You're going to love it. There you go.
So you're going to give us a proposal of how to handle this in August?
In July.
July.
Eileen and I need to lock ourselves in a room for 2 hours and see who wins.
That's next week. Okay. Well, same question on the stormwater regulations update, and I just want to say one thing before we do that, because there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of rumors going around. I don't want to call this fake news because that's a bad term right now, but this is not a new regulation that we're talking about here. What we are doing is what is stipulated by law, is having open discussion of reviewing a regulation that has been in place for over 2 decades to see if recent scientific developments, anything, and actually 20 years of experience merits changing any of these regulations to either make them easier on people because what they require is not helping the environment, so they don't have to actually do it, or to change them and in some cases maybe make them a little tougher because what we've been doing hasn't worked. It's not a new regulation. It's a look at existing regulations of over 2 decades and just to revise them if we have to. We don't have to change them, but if it makes sense based on experience and based on new science to change them, then we will do that. Did I take any of your thunder?
No, that was a good introduction. So we've administered stormwater jurisdiction since 1992, I believe, Joe. And so we've learned a lot over that time frame. We've also watched what's happened in Lake George over that time frame. We've had the benefit of numerous studies since that time, most of which concur that there's water quality impacts to Lake George and that they're increasing. And so what we need to do is take a look holistically. And one of the most common comments I get is it's the state of New York, it's the transportation infrastructure, it's this, it's that. That's all the problem. And that's part of the problem. So it is undoubted that development within the Lake George Park is by far the #1 water quality impairment to the waters of Lake George. So what the commission is trying to do is work with all partners to say, in a very open forum, here's what we know is happening out there from the public infrastructure, because I spent 20 years doing it back in the day with people like Walt and Chris and Soil and Water. But let's also take a look at what's happening on the private properties. And can we do any better at a reasonable action for landowners to step up and try to keep stormwater on their property. The intent of the Commission's stormwater regulations is to, if you're going to be developing a property, that project should be stormwater neutral. By the time you're done, there should be no more stormwater runoff, no more pollutants coming off that property than before you built it. That is the premise of those regulations and has been ever since. Has that been working flawlessly? No. We think the regulations that we have in place, they are definitely tighter than the DEC's stormwater regulations, but we think that there's room for doing a little bit better in the regulations. And we're also, as the chairman has noted, looking at areas where if we have certain standards and we can't verify that those standards are having any impact on water quality, why do we have those standards? So maybe we're going to be looking at a little bit of relief on some of the standards that we're talking about. So we still have a draft internal commission document. It's pretty straightforward. It's only 4 pages long of the things that we're looking at. And it's really only 5 topics that we're looking at. And we don't see them as great overreach, but what I want to solidify with the chairman and the commission before we start meeting with the towns and focus groups and then the general public is to make sure this board is fully on board with where we are as a draft. Now, this draft, all it consists of is what we want to start talking to the public about. So I know there's some people out there that are rallying up the troops saying, we're going to stop whatever it is. We don't know what it is yet, but we're going to stop it. And we're hoping that's not going to be our opening salvo because we want to get the word out. And number one, let's discuss exactly what's happening in Lake George based on the science that's out there. The fact that we have 20-foot water clarity in the South Basin and 40-foot water clarity in the North Basin is a telling sign. The fact that the algae levels in Lake George over the last 10 years have gone tremendously much more abundant is a telling sign. Taking a look at the impacts that are out there, are all of them from private property? Absolutely not. Are all of them from the public properties that are actually conduits for runoff also from private properties? It's a combination, and we want to take a look at that combination, and we want to be honest about exactly where we are, because there's very proactive work going on in the public infrastructure to improve it and to try to make that stormwater neutral. And what we want to do is try to ratchet up a couple of things on private properties when they're going to be doing development applications that will try to make it a little bit more stormwater neutral. So at the end of the day, 10 years from now, we're bending that curve because our water quality in Lake George is declining. How do we stem that tide a little bit? And it's been proven. They did it in Lake Tahoe. So if you take a look at some of their work, what they have done, they've actually increased the water quality. It's an amazing story. Read about it sometime. I'm not sure we're going to get there with the cut that we have right now and the amount of resources that we have because we're not Lake Tahoe, but I think we can do better, and I think our commissioners think that we can do better, but we want to have that conversation with the general public. So I'm going to be making some contacts with our local municipal officials, the zoning board, chairman, planning board, town supervisor, highway superintendent, town engineer, to sit down in a room and present them with what we think are some decent ideas to try to move forward that are reasonably based and have that conversation. How would this work in the town of Bolton or the town of Putnam or Dresden? Does it make sense to you and your constituency? Okay, we think this is overreaching. We think you should do some other things here. At the end of those conversations, have other conversations with the Lake George landowners groups, with the environmental groups, with the design groups that are actually putting forth these things when somebody wants to do something on their property. Those designers, the Tom Hutchins and the Tom Jarrett's of the world that live and breathe this stuff, does this make sense? And do you see the merit in what we're trying to do here? So what we're looking at over the next really 6 months to a year is getting these ideas solidified to a point where people understand the issue and they believe that we have a chance to do better. If they don't, well, we may not always agree on everything, but if the overwhelming public consent is that we have an ability to try to do better at a reasonable impact to local landowners, let's try to do so. So that's where we are right now, pending the chairman and the commissioners overall go ahead to say, yeah, go ahead and start meeting with some of these folks. We're going to probably start that up next week. So that's kind of a quick summary, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, got any questions?
I have a recommendation.
Sorry?
2 days ago, I'm headed up to the barn, which is a patch of the woods, and it's coming down cats and dogs, as we say around here. I mean, it's really raining. You know, it's like you stand in your driveway and you're wet in 3 seconds. Okay? And I'm under a pine tree up there because that's where you stay. You don't want to really get soaked. And I'm looking around in the forest, and there isn't that kind of rain in the forest floor. If you walk and stand in the forest in a thunderstorm, you'll see how those trees and the surrounding understory, we call it mystifying the rain. It doesn't come down in the sheeting hard rain like that. It comes down to fine mist by the time it gets to the forest floor, which now soaks it up. And I look around where I'm standing within 50 yards in any direction, there's no water runoff anywhere, none, zero. Okay. If I went 200 yards down on my driveway, it's coming off that driveway in sheets. And it's coming off the roof in sheets. It's coming off any other thing where it's a non-porous surface. My advice to those of you who don't understand that is to go stand in the forest in a pouring down rain like we've had lately and look at the difference, okay? And that difference is what we're trying to say is what we need to maintain on Lake George. Okay? It's almost impossible to take a forest, tear it down, and put back a house in the driveway and maintain the level of water absorption that you get in a normal forest, and now what you don't get in a building area. And we have, I think, a lot of what Dave's trying to do is to get us back to the realization that you just can't tear down forests and think you're going to build back something that's going to work that way. It just doesn't work that way. So my first advice is for those who haven't ever been in the middle of a forest in a pouring down, driving rain, go do that and look around and see what you see.
Thank you, Dean. Any other questions? Okay. Mr. Parker, law enforcement.
We did. 9 a.m. we had a law enforcement meeting, and some of the subjects we reviewed included our equipment, our boats, and the position on the boats. We have 2 new additional sound meters that came from Parks and Rec as a loan or a gift to the Park Commission. We talked about the boats that are out there now and the schedule for the summer, and some enforcement actions. And I have a resolution that I can read. I can see it. The Law Enforcement Committee met June 27, 2017 to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's law enforcement program. And whereas active law enforcement cases and their status were reviewed in executive session, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full commission meeting, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report, now therefore be it resolved that the Commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee. And I would move that.
I'll second it. It's been moved and seconded to accept the law enforcement report. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Well, we've already had plenty, but we're now at the point, it's official public comments. Does anybody want to make any comments? Ron, you want to make it again?
The Southern Basin seems to be getting a lot more commercial activity. And when I used to be down there in the marina, they used to have these paddle boats, and most people would paddle out a ways, but they get tired real quick, and then they try to come back against the wind and couldn't get back. And I see them just jump right off the paddle boat and let it go before. And but the other day I was down there in the village driving through in my boat, and I noticed about 30 kayakers, not all together in a group, but they were in all different spots in the Southern Basin spread out, and might even been more. I'm just wondering, because these motels are all competing against each other, and now they're going to maybe start coming out with kayaks used for these motels. Maybe they should be, these motels, they should put these poles on the kayak with a flag on it so it could be seen from a distance. Because sometimes in the weather conditions, if it's choppy, and say you've got a blue kayak, it could be partially distorted, and it may create a problem where these motels, if they want to let the guests use them at a price probably, tell them they have to have a flag on it, or a pole flag, and so that would be seen. The other question is, talking about Charlotte there, the girl that got killed, the boating accident. Terrible, terrible, terrible accident. Believe me. And I know the guy was partying, drinking, boating. But one thing I think could have maybe had a difference in the outcome, which no one spoke about, is if you ever notice out on the lake about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, it's dead quiet. You might hear a boat once in a while. Very seldom, dead quiet. Because most boaters don't like to drive in the dark. And even me. If I know I'm going someplace up north and I'm not going to stay the night, I'll make sure I'm back before dark. And a lot of my friends do the same thing. You know, we drive responsibly, say. But here's the thing. Back, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago, a guy named John Michaels died in a boating accident. I think that accident could have been prevented if there was no boating after dark. Because he would have seen that island on his boat if it was during the day. He never would have crashed into it. But I don't know why anybody ever speaks of that or says anything about it. And obviously this guy was on drugs and when he crashed into it. But when it gets dark, if you're drinking, you get tired. Maybe you close your eyes a little bit or something. But a lot of these accidents could have been prevented. You know, and I don't know, you know, I hate to say I want you to stop it, but I don't know why it never come up, because it should have had something to do with it. But talking about Charlotte again, every year, Labor Day weekend, 200 to 300 boaters all congregate in Log Bay, and I'm one of them. We celebrate what we call Christmas, our Christmas party. Some of the boats decorate with lights on it and whatnot, and you can walk right across the bay. One step on the next dock, step on the next boat, and walk right across the bay. There's money in there. Last year, we collected over $3,000 in memories of that Charlotte that died, and it goes to Toys for Tots Christmas party. It's been going on for as long as I can remember. I can't remember when it ever started, but I know I've been boating for almost 20 years, and it's been there ever since I can remember. But when us boaters, I consider us responsible boaters. When that party is all over with, and he can relate to this, you won't even find a styrofoam cup in the water. For that Log Bay party, you got to watch out for broken bottles, glass, and everything else. So I'm with you to stop that Log Bay party, but also at the same time, it does kind of say, okay, we're part of the Log Bay party company, but we're not. I'm sure some of them do come to it, but I just wanted to make that point because we've never gotten any recognition for collecting this money every year, okay? And we don't advertise it, this party, but that's the way us boaters are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Move. We adjourn.
Second.
Just like that?
Yeah, it's just like we did it.
Any discussion on adjournment? We're adjourned.
See, Bill, if you were on this side, this is where the action is.